Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and thank you so much for tuning in with me today. So the video you've all been waiting for is finally here. Today I'm going to be doing my yearly eyeshadow palette ranking. I am going to be ranking all of the eyeshadow palette releases from 2024 from worst to the best. This year I kind of included also some palettes that came out in late 2023, but none of them were released prior to Halloween time of 2023. And the majority are obviously palettes from 2024. But I still wanted to include those because I did not include them in last year's ranking. I mean, in 2024, there were so many eyeshadow palettes being released. In total, I accumulated 75 eyeshadow palettes. That's a lot, so this video might be a little bit of a longer one. So if you do end up enjoying this ranking, why not give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and also ring the bell in order to get notified about my upcoming content. And also, right before we are starting this ranking, I just want to say this is solely based upon my experience with these palettes. I mean, if I have ranked something at the bottom that you really enjoy, look, I'm gonna love it for you. This ranking is solely meant for fun purposes. It is just a fun way for me to look back at last year's releases, at what I picked up and what worked out for me and what did not maybe work out for me 100%. Most of these palettes have amazing quality, and I was also a little bit pickier with what I picked up this year. So it made it extremely difficult, and it definitely gave me a headache. Just filming this video gives me a headache, to be honest with you, because it's just a lot to prepare. It is still fun, but it is a lot to think of. However, I did make up my mind, and I'm so happy to share, today's video with you. Please do let me know. Have you tried any of these palettes? What was your favorite palette of 2024? If you have tried out any, I would be really curious to know. Just drop me a comment and say hi, because you guys know I always look forward reading them. And as a side note, I also just wanted to mention something really quickly, because maybe some of you are wondering where these palettes are in my ranking, because I was raving all year about them. And I made the conscious decision to actually exclude Ansley Rain from today's ranking because of what has transpired about this brand, and I just don't feel comfortable talking about them at this point. Now, I will wait to see what is going on in the future, but as of right now, I don't feel like that they have done enough to be deserving to actually be included in today's ranking. So I just left them out. So just so you know, if you have been in the eyeshadow community for a while, you probably know what has been going on with them. And I just want you to know that I don't stand for these things. I just wanted to have made that clear, because maybe you are wondering, where are these palettes? You've been talking all year about them. What happened? So, I mean, it's nothing personal with me, right? But it's something like a bigger drama that has happened. But that's that. Enough of the talking. I really want to get into this ranking because we have 75 palettes to go through. So I would say let's start off with the worst palette that I've tried out in 2024. Now listen, this palette just disappointed me, and I have not featured this on my channel just yet. This was released, I would say, towards the end of 2024. It might not be the worst palette that there is out there, but man, I did not have a great experience with this whatsoever. So number 75 is gonna go to Visia. And this is the Sereneuse Étendue eyeshadow palette. This went really viral, and I thought, you know what, this actually looks cute. Let me pick it up. Let me see if I'm gonna like it. I've never tried Visia before, and I'm just baffled why everyone is raving about these palettes. I don't get it. Let me just tell you, this was such a disappointment. I was so disappointed in this formula. This is so dry. It was so dry. This was the most powdery mess I've used in such a long time. I mean, it's been a really long time since I've seen such sad, disappointing, lackluster duochromes, because this shade right here, my gosh, this looked so texture enhancing on my lids. All of them did not look great. I'm just going to show you some swatches, and even the swatches, they just look sad. The matte tones, I don't think that they really go together that well, to be honest. I also feel like just the curation and the ratio of the matte tones versus the shimmers the velvets, the satins, whatever you want to call them, is just a little bit off. He's really lacked pigmentation. I tried to build him up and build him up and build him up. And I sat there for so long, and it was just so time consuming to actually create the look, for it to vanish at the end of my day. And it was just not a pleasant experience. Not great. Not great. Really not. But all right, so let's move on to number 74. And number 74 is gonna go to the Master Mattes, the Neutrals eyeshadow palette by Makeup by Mario. I did expect a little bit more of this palette, if I'm honest. I thought that this was also very dry, very powdery. I mean, you can tell by just looking at this palette. I gave this a fair chance. I tried this out on so many occasions, and every time I used this palette, I just felt like my eye look always looked the same. It always just looked like a neutral brown, no matter what brown shade I was using, no matter the combination, it really just turned out to just kind of look the same at the end of the day. Like, this was just kind of meh for the price point. I also don't like this packaging. It's kind of like really boring and generic, and it does not even open up completely. So this is not inexpensive. I think this is selling around $50, which is a lot for only matte shades. I mean, it could have like blown my mind, but it just didn't. So that's why it ended up here. Okay, and then number 73 is gonna go to the Dreamy Dozen Volume 2 by Lawless. This is not necessarily a bad palette, but it's also not something that I would go crazy about. I have tried out so many Lawless eyeshadow palettes, especially in the past, that did perform a little bit better. This matte formula is very buildable and it blends out beautifully. My biggest issue though are these shimmers. These shimmers are so texture enhancing. They are a little bit lackluster. I feel like they really need an update. Like, compared to everything else that's gonna come up, this shimmer formula reminds me of an outdated formula. I do appreciate though that it goes from very light to very deep. That is something that is always quite important to me. I really like to have that balance in terms of ratio going from light to deep. Let's actually move on to number 72 in my ranking. Number 72 is gonna go to Martin Cosmetics, and this is the Martin's Circus eyeshadow palette. The outer packaging of this eyeshadow palette was so cool, so fun. It was like a circus sort of theme, and this was a Halloween release. This was the only palette that I picked up last year by Martin Cosmetics. It's trying to do a lot of things. It's a very colorful eyeshadow palette. I do feel like it's being a little bit repetitive when it comes to the orange tones. The matte formula is actually lovely. It's nice, it's pigmented, it blends out well. Apart from that purple shade that was a little bit patchier that I had to blend and blend and blend. The shimmer formula, I feel like Martin Cosmetics has a couple of different formulas, and some of them are just better than others. Some of them are really beautiful, like the shade Twisty. And also this shade was really pretty, and the shade, but some of these others just felt a little bit too hard pressed. They were just a little bit too lackluster. So let's move on to the next spot. Let's move on to number 71 in the ranking. And number 71 is going to go to Unearthly Cosmetics, and this is the High Temp eyeshadow palette. Unearthly Cosmetics is definitely one of my favorite brands, don't get me wrong. This is very personal, very personal, and I kind of feel bad that I ranked this palette so low. However, I just don't love this. I don't love this. I think they came out this year with so many other amazing palettes that are also going to come up in this ranking. But this color story, when I started using this, I really felt like this was too much. And I rarely say that. I rarely say that something is too much. But for me personally, this is just too warm. I do have a little bit more of a neutral leaning cool undertone. This palette just kind of has a different formula than all of the other palettes I've tried out this year by them. This was much more pigmented, and I don't mind pigmentation. Really not. I honestly rather have a pigmented palette than something that is completely lackluster, right? But it was too much. It was too much with these type of tones. And I also thought that the bottom row, when I looked at it, I thought, oh, I'm gonna love this. This is a little bit more cool toned, a little bit more dusty movie. Oh, no. It wasn't like that. This was very vibrant. very vibrant, very saturated. And I think it was this opacity combined with these tones. It did not look great on me. Also, I did not really like these shimmers. Like these shimmers, the tones of them, especially the golden one and this one, not my thing. Not my favorite thing in the world. So this is just very personal because I feel like this is a palette that has quality, blends out beautifully, although it's very pigmented, right? But it just does not look good on me. It was not it, okay? Oh, I'm so sorry. Unearthly, oh my gosh. So let's move on to my number 70. So number 70 is gonna go to Cryptane Cosmetics, and this is the Burnt Forest eyeshadow palette. So this is actually a brand that I tried out for the very first time last year. I think this is also a newer brand, if I'm not mistaken. I love the packaging. When I saw this, I was like, oh man, I think I'm gonna like this. Not necessarily a bad palette, but it also really did not blow my socks off in the sense that I just feel like for the price point, the deep mattes were very, very, very deep. And then the upper row of mattes, they almost lacked pigmentation to a point where I just built them up and built them up and built them up. They also did not blend out that great. So I feel like some midtones would have made this palette just a little bit better. I definitely do prefer the shimmer formula a little bit. However, this is also a case of the shimmers being just a little bit too emollient for my liking, being a little bit too wet. But like this blue was very emollient. This was unfortunately a black-based shimmer, and I don't really like black-based shimmers. This was pretty, this was pretty, and this was pretty. Like these three, I kind of like those three shimmers. This could have been interesting if it would have been executed a little bit better. The next palette, oh dear lord, oh dear lord. This was also a little bit more of a formula issue, to be honest with you, because I love this brand. So number 69 is gonna go to Odin's Eye Eternal Twilight eyeshadow palette. And I would have loved this so much more if they would have not tweaked their formula. They had an amazing formula. What are they doing? Like, I really don't get it. Now, I don't mind larger palettes, you know. I really don't. And I thought this is also something new for the brand. This is actually interesting. It's something different. We have like a darker side and we have a lighter side. It was kind of a fun concept and I love the cover art, but the color story inside also pretty. I mean, I definitely do prefer the right side of this palette for sure. Some of these shimmers, most of them, was so waxy, so emollient. So I just had such a hard time avoiding creasing like upon application. Like this creased on me immediately. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And also this green stained my eyes for days. I could not get this off. I could not get this off of my eyes and I never had that issue before. I don't know what they've been doing because this could have been such a beautiful, beautiful palette, especially this. This row definitely screams my name. If you know what I like, my preferences, man, I love cool tones. I really hope that they are just not sticking with this formula because I don't understand it. I just hope they can change it back to what it was, please. Okay, number 68 is gonna go to a palette that I have not featured on my channel just yet, but I'm planning to. This one is by Lisa Aldrich and it's the eyeshadow palette in the colorway Fawn. So here is this little palette by Lisa Aldrich. I'm a huge fan of Lisa Aldrich makeup. I love her brand. I actually have another one of her eyeshadow palettes that was released, oh my gosh, I think back in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. So this was a new color story that she released. It is very neutral with a little bit of pinkiness to it. Now, this formula is not my favorite one. I feel like it's the exact same formula that was in my other eyeshadow palette. This one right here is this Velvet formula. And I just felt like it took me such a long time to make it look even. And it was just kind of like a time-consuming process, you know? I just feel like she should just stick with the finishes that make more sense. Because I don't need this to be a velvet. I just want this to be a matte. I want every shimmer to be this formula. And this formula is actually a luminous finish. And then this one is a satin. I just wish she could stick to that luminous finish because it's so pretty and it would have made this palette a lot more interesting. Rest assured, I will be showing you guys this eyeshadow palette and maybe you're gonna understand what I mean. I definitely do prefer her liquid shadows a lot more over this one. So let's move on to the next one, and my number 67 is gonna go to Titanium Foxes, and this is the Poppy Storm eyeshadow palette. Now, this is also by an indie brand. I think this is an indie brand out of France. And when I saw this, I really wanted to try it out because I thought this had a beautiful color story. The ratio going from light to deep is there. The tones are very interesting. I will say the shimmer formula is spectacular. However, I'm just not a fan of this matte formula. This is a case of the matte formula being almost too pigmented for some shades and then too lackluster for other shades. And they are too powdery. They are too dry in my opinion. I wish they could have been a little bit more buttery, more silky, but you know, this was their very first release, so I feel like there is still room for improvement here. So the next one, kind of similar story here. So this one is number 66 and it's by Beauty Bay, and this is their botanical eyeshadow palette. Beauty Bay is always releasing these 20 pan eyeshadow palettes and then they are just there for a week and then they just disappear. When I saw this, I was like, wow. I was really drawn to this color story. I thought this was refreshing. Then I started using this and I felt like the matte formulation was just not it. These mattes did not perform the way that I'm used to by Beauty Bay. I'm just not used to that. I just did not want to blend out like at all. And then this minty shade really almost did not show up on me. And another thing that I realized was that this shade right here and this shade right here, they are the deepest shades in this palette. They might give you the impression that they are deep, but they're not. When they go onto the eyes, they are definitely more of a mid-toned, leaning deep shade, but they are definitely not a deepening up shade, and that is completely missing from this color story. And I just wish they could have added a deeper shade. The shimmers were fine. I just realized that this shade right here, I already have that shade. I've got that shade in my Metamorphic palette. So when you're looking at it, it really looks pretty, but when you are interacting with it, it's like, okay, so let's move on to the next one. Number 65 in the ranking is gonna go to Gourmand Girls, and this is the Nueva Vida eyeshadow palette. This was a collaboration with another content creator called Steph's Beauty Stash. I love this brand. I know this just made it a little bit like lower in the ranking. It's just maybe not for every day. It is maybe not my favorite color story that they have ever come out with. I really wish the shimmer shades could have been just a little bit more special, something a little bit different, because I know Gourmand Girls can make like these really special shades. You can create a cohesive look with this. I mean, it goes from light to very deep. I just prefer some other palettes by them, okay? And there are some more palettes coming up by them. It's a beautiful palette, don't get me wrong. I love the formula. I love their formula, really do. I also really like the next brand, so I'm not sure if this has been revealed yet. I actually did an unboxing of this mystery box on my channel, so if you don't want to get spoiled though, because I don't want to ruin it for you, okay? Maybe just skip to the timestamp right here if you don't want to see it, in case you've just ordered it. I'm talking about my number 64 going to Cosmic Beauty, and this is their Sinister palette. I was very excited when I saw it, but when I started creating looks with this palette, I was just like, I don't know if I love it 100%. I wanted to love it a lot more. I think that I ended up doing. Some of these reds really pull hot pink on me. You guys may know that phenomena that I'm always talking about, right? And I need some yellow or some orange in my palette to save my look. I think this is okay. I will say I was very disappointed with this shade right here. This shade right here, it looks so pretty. It is too creamy. I don't know what this ghost shade is all about. I still don't know. Is this a primer? Is this an eye gloss? At the end of the day, it boils down to being wasted space in my palette because I don't want an eye gloss and I really don't want a primer, a sticky primer like that, because I've got my primers. I get it. It's called Ghost and it's translucent. Ha ha ha. But I did not pay for that. And I did not want that. I will say I do like the inner part of the palette, like these two rows. I could have done without this entire row, and this shade just was not great. The next palette, again, I did expect so much more. So this one is number 63. It is by Colourpop Cosmetics, and this is the collaboration with Stranger Things. I really wanted to have it. When I saw this being revealed, I was like, yes, this looks So pretty. This just looks like Stranger Things in an eyeshadow palette. And then I started creating looks with this. And although it's a pretty palette, the quality is okay. This palette comes with 16 shades and there are only 6 matte shades. I wish we could have had a couple more matte shades. And I also wish that the deepest shade in here would not just be this black shade. Some of these shimmers just pulled so dark. This pulled so dark, this pulled so dark, this pulled so dark. I prefer my shimmers to be a little bit brighter, a little bit lighter. This is a glitter and this is a glitter. It is a little bit more gritty, but it's not gonna scratch. I wish they could just make a standard shimmer formula, and it's something I'm gonna be critiquing about ColourPop. I just don't love it. I also don't like their sequin shades, the matte sparkling shades. I really don't love them. Thankfully, we don't have any in this palette. I don't know. I preferred some of the other releases by ColourPop this year, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I did not pick up that many. I have 2 more coming up in this ranking. So, next spot. Number 62 is gonna go to Kmart Cosmetics, and this is the Skulls and Roses eyeshadow palette. This palette is by an indie brand from the UK. I really wanted to try out their eyeshadows this year. I picked up 2. This is one of them. It is, again, that color story that was very popular this year. We also have a great ratio going from light to deep with some midtones in here. The only thing is that when it comes to the shimmers, I feel like there's a lot of pink. A lot of these shades are gonna pull some shade of pink. And then the shade Dazzle, again, same thing. It's like this glittery, gritty, sharp glitter. I don't love it. I really don't. Otherwise, I will say I do adore this matte formula. The matte formula is amazing. I really like it. There are just a couple of things that I don't love 100% about this palette. The next one is one that actually did surprise me for the low price point. This is very affordable. So this is number 61 and it goes to NYX, and this is the Ultimate Battle Plan. This little palette really surprised me. This was also the very first time that I ever tried out a NYX eyeshadow palette. This is a collaboration with the movie Home Alone. I think for the price point, this is such a cute eyeshadow palette. This was very pretty. Some of these shimmer shades were very impactful, very sparkly, and the mattes were okay. I mean, they're not like the best formula in the world. I could not rank it any higher because obviously the palettes that are gonna be following are just a little bit better. This is only $12 or something, so it's very cheap, and it was really well performing for the price point. All right, so let's move on to the next spot, and number 60 is gonna go to Bella Beauté Bar, and this is the Vamp eyeshadow palette. Now, this was their Halloween release, and I definitely do think it's giving me Halloween vibes. It's a pretty palette, it's just not my favorite color story again. I also feel like that these red tones turn completely hot pink on me, and this one turned completely berry on me, which was very unexpected. Their shimmer formulas, a lot of the times, are just too wet. They are too emollient and they tend to crease on me, some more than others. In general, I kind of like it, but I'm not the biggest fan. There's also one of these sequin shades. I did not need this sparkly, like red shimmer in my black shade. Not my favorite thing compared to everything else. That's why it landed at number 60. I mean, I gotta be super nitpicky here, okay? Oh, it just landed where it landed. Same thing goes for the next palette. I would have loved this so much more if this could have had some tweaks to the formula. And my number 59 is gonna go to ColourPop. This is the Twilight eyeshadow palette. Oh my gosh, this bloody palette broke the internet, didn't it? I mean, I'm not a big Twilight fan. I got to admit that. I think these movies are not that great in my opinion. Don't come for me. But I don't think they're that great. However, I will say the color story, very much up my alley. Some muted tones, some subdued matte shades. I really like this color story. I love lilacs. I love these like ashy blues. I also like these cool toned taupey neutrals. I think this really captured the essence of the color grading that was done in the very first movie very well. The only thing I don't love is the inclusion of these bloody gel glitters again. Because all of these stunning iridescent, I think there are 3 shades like that. This one, and this one. And I was looking forward to these shades, but they are all like glitter shades and I just don't love it. I would have ranked this much higher if these glitter shades weren't included, if this would have been just a normal standard matte black instead of that sequin shade again. Sometimes it is just a little bit too much to have a bunch of different formulas in one eyeshadow palette. Sometimes I feel like they should just stick with what is the best. Maybe some people like these glitters. I just don't. I really don't. Okay, so let's move on to the next palette, and this is number 58, and this is going to go to Cosmic Beauty, and this is their Culturals palette. Now, I did not expect to actually rank this that low, but to be honest with you, this is not my favorite palette by Cosmic Beauty. And I really thought that when they announced this palette alongside with another palette that is going to come up in this ranking, I really thought that this would be my favorite one out of the two. This could have been a cool neutral palette, but they did not deliver on that. Also, these two more cool toned neutral shades in here, they were so lackluster. Like, they were so lackluster. I don't know what happened here. I just don't like the fact that this has a black matte and also a sequin black. Like, why did we need both? Could this have been like a beautiful mid-tone taupe, like a real taupe? Where is the taupe? Actually, this is my favorite shade in this entire palette. I love it. It's a beautiful cool toned lilac shade. It has such a pretty shift. But then why did we need this? It's just a little bit of a missed opportunity in my opinion. Otherwise, it's an okay formula. All right, so let's move on to number 57, and this is by Odin's Eye, and this is the Spring Dragon eyeshadow palette in collaboration with Judy. Odin's Eye did release 3 different collaborators eyeshadow palettes for the springtime of 2024. I really like this palette. And I think a pastel eyeshadow palette was definitely still lacking from their selection. So I think it was a good addition to the Odin's Eye lineup. I did not love this brown shade. This deeper brown shade was just too deep. It was too contrasty with all of these pastels. Maybe we could have had like a mid-tone somewhere. One of the shades could have been a mid-tone. I don't love it 100%, you know, compared to everything else. It was all right. It was all right. Same with the next eyeshadow palette. So number 56 is going to go to another Odin's Eye eyeshadow palette, and this is the Silvery Bliss. This palette was released for the holidays, for the Christmas season of 2024. This is pretty, but when I look at the color story, it immediately gives me Valentine's Day vibes. Some of these shades I do prefer more than others. I will say I don't really love like a really, really warm toned gold. It's not my thing necessarily. Again, they have included some of these very waxy shimmer formulas. Especially the shade Pink Fantasy was one of them. And I think the shade Silver Stream too. It's just okay, you know? I mean, there was nothing wrong with these mattes. They were fine. All right, so the next one, my number 55, is gonna go to Adapt Cosmetics, and this is the Amy Loves palette. Man, this packaging is blinding. This is such pretty packaging. It's so beautiful. This color story is completely up my alley, you guys, and you may be wondering why I have not ranked this up any higher. I would have ranked this so much higher because I love cool tones. But the one thing I really dislike about this palette is the selection of these matte shades. Why on earth did we need all of these dark shades? Why? I wished I could have been like a bright shade in here, a light shade. I had a lot of issues making this work with the mattes. I completely forgot to mention that this is actually a collaboration with a content creator called Amy Loves Makeup. I'm not too familiar with her channel, but I feel like she has a very different kind of eyeshadow style to me. As I said so many times before, I like having a light matte, a mid-tone matte, and a dark matte to create a cohesive look. And you guys know I said that many times. I don't love Adapt's matte formula. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's the best. You can't really like just use a little bit of this shade and then assume it's gonna turn like it's gonna be a light shade on you. It's just not realistic. Not with this formula. So I was so disappointed. I had to pull in another eyeshadow palette to make this work. I would have ranked this so much higher if there would have been a better variation in these matte tones. They are so deep. and it was so difficult to work with them. It was really difficult to work with them. The rest of the palette is stunning apart from this. Again, formula was just too gritty, too sharp for my liking, but these other shades were beautiful. And the next spot is number 54, and it's gonna go to Odin's Eye, and this is the Hey Reindeer eyeshadow palette. This palette was actually their holiday release of 2023. I did feature the Snow Dream eyeshadow palette, the one with the snowman cover, in last year's ranking. I actually did not pick up this palette when it came out. I picked this up, I want to say maybe June 2024. I just feel like this color story was just screaming summer to me. It really did not give me any Christmas vibes. I think it's giving me such summer vibes. I don't know why. I really like this yellow here. This yellow was so stunning. And some of these shades are really, really pretty and sparkly. I really like the combination of like a baby blue with a red tone. Some of these are my favorite types of combinations. Pretty palette, okay? Really like it. I just love what's following a little bit more. Let's move on to number 53, and that one is gonna go to Gloss Gods, and this is the Let's Get Nude eyeshadow palette. Gloss Gods is a Swedish brand. I really like their formula. I really like their palettes. They make some intense and incredible shimmers, and I also really do like their matte formula. This is a pretty palette. I just wish we could have had another matte shade. I really like the fact though that this goes from light to deep. However, I really wished I could have been more of like a neutral, more like cool toned matte brown shade in here, or maybe even a purple or something a little bit different. So it's a great formula, but the color story and the selection of what is in here is not 100% perfect, okay? That's my only reasoning for putting it at this spot. Nonetheless, I like this palette. Let's move on to the next spot, and this one is number 52. It's gonna go to Lunar Beauty, and this is the Siren Sunset eyeshadow palette. Another palette that was released during Halloween of 2023. This cover is so pretty, man. This is like a cool toned neutrals palette with some colorful, like electric, sort of like green, purple, and blue shades. I really like this palette. Some of the shimmers, I will say, do pull a little bit too deep on me. I was a little bit disappointed when I used this shade right here. I felt like it was pulling very deep on my eyelids. And so did this. I really don't love this shade right here, and I also don't like this shade. It's something about these tones that don't work 100% on me. I like the formula. I don't like the selection of these deeper shimmers. I think it's pretty. The mattes are amazing. I really like this matte formula. Really good. All right, so let's move on to the next palette. Number 51 is gonna go to Cosmic Beauty, and this is the Winter Wonderland eyeshadow palette. This was released late 2023. I only tried it out early 2024. I pulled this one out this winter again, and my gosh, I actually like this palette. I really like it. I love these lilac tones. I love these blue purple tones, the teals, this shade Winter Solstice, this multichrome. Stunning. Really beautiful. You know, there are a couple of things about this palette that I don't love 100%. And I think it's maybe just my palette. I have not heard anyone saying this or mentioning this, but I had a lot of issues with this shade Chill. It was just so hard pressed to the point where it was so sticky. And there was another shade like that. I think it was the shade Reflection. Like the deeper shimmer shades were just, there was something off about the formula. It's a pretty palette. I don't have that much to critique about it, you know. From here on now, it's gonna be very difficult and very nitpicky. Super nitpicky. All right, so my number 50 is gonna go to Odin's Eye, and this is the Trick or Treat eyeshadow palette. This was a Halloween collaboration release for 2023. I picked mine up again during the summertime of 2024. That's why it's in this video. I like this palette. This palette is pretty, man. It's really pretty. Has some fun shades in here. Quality is amazing. Just some of these shades are not my favorite ones. And if you know me, you know very well that I don't like a mustardy yellow, and I'm not the biggest fan of an olive green. I mean, I get it. This is beautiful for the Halloween season. This is well curated. It gives me very autumnal sort of vibes. I love this shimmer right here, and I love this one right here. And this like very light golden shade, also pretty. The green, intense, intense. But I really like the formula here. And the next one is number 49. And this one is gonna go to Kaima Cosmetics. And it's the Bougie Boudoir eyeshadow palette. This was their second palette after they had released the Skulls and Roses palette. The color story is a movie pinky neutral curation of mattes. The shimmers are very, very sparkly. They are high intensity. This palette swatches so well. However, a couple of these shimmer shades, the shade Star, for example, again, it's a little bit more of a flakier formula, and it immediately creased on me. It was almost like a little bit sandy. This really swatched well, but I did not like it on my eye. Otherwise, I like the color story. It's pretty, the mattes are nice. I really like this shade Fame. Fame is my favorite shade out of this entire palette. All right, so let's move on to the next spot. And number 48 is gonna go to Nomad Cosmetics, and this is the Air Travel Oslo eyeshadow palette. This is a beautiful palette that was part of a larger collection. There were two other eyeshadow palettes in two other colorways, but I only wanted to pick up this one. I think the level of contrast is definitely there, going from light to deep. I also really like the tones of the shimmers. This is more of a metallic finish, whereas Nomad usually has these really beautiful, smooth, sparkly eyeshadows, like shimmers. I did create such a beautiful eye look with this, but it's also more of a monochromatic six-pan palette. You really can't be that creative with something like this. It's gonna limit you to a certain degree. So next spot. So number 47 is gonna go to Odin's Eye, and this is the Little Ghost eyeshadow palette. Another collaboration with Angelica Nyquist. She brought out the Trick or Treat palette alongside with this Little Ghost eyeshadow palette, and I just came to the realization that I just love this color story a little bit more. I really wanted to reach for this in the summertime, so I had a lot of fun with this. I really like the fact that this goes from light to deep. I like the curation here, really love it. I mean, apart from the pink and the orange, not my favorite tones in the world, this yellow is bomb. It's so good, and it's so hard to create a great yellow. But this really did the job. It's so stunning, and I really love it. So that's where it ended up. Whew, I'm already like getting out of breath here, so let's move on to the next spot. So number 46 is gonna go to Blend Bunny Cosmetics, and this is the Machina eyeshadow palette. I think this is the very first time in my ranking that we are encountering Blend Bunny Cosmetics. Like, the packaging, really pretty. I just think with this palette, it's not so much a question of the quality, because it's never really a question of quality with Blend Bunny. It is more of a color story thing with this. There are some shimmer shades in here that are absolutely beautiful. This shade Sci-Fi and this shade Cyborg. The only thing that I don't love 100% are these two tones. These tones, they are just kind of ruining the palette for me. And this is giving me swamp vibes all the way. It just never looks good on me. I wish this could have included like a neon sort of green, like a grass green. Because when I think of sci-fi, I don't think about these tones. I want a grass green. I did create some beautiful looks with this, but I definitely have some that I do prefer over this one. So let's move on to the next spot. And number 45 is going to go to Odin's Eye, and this is the Mighty Monster eyeshadow palette in collaboration with Annette's Makeup Corner. Now, this was again the collaboration that Odin's Eye did with the content creators for their spring collection. This is a fun palette. This is so fun. You can create some popping looks with this. And I also love the fact that she included like these more neutral tones here, but I can see the vision. I can see what she wanted to do. Overall, I have some other color stories that I prefer, but I think it's fun nonetheless. Okay, so number 44 is gonna go to Huda Beauty, and this is the Pretty Grunge eyeshadow palette. This was a birthday present from my boyfriend this year, but this actually came out during the holiday season of 2023. Nice color story. I like the formula a lot. It does pull quite deep on the eyes though. However, it's beautiful. It's a stunning palette. I love it. I like these tones. You know, the color selection is nice. These shimmers might not be my all-time favorite shimmers in the world, but it's a good, solid palette. Next palette, oh my gosh. They are fantastic. Number 43 is gonna go to Glamlight, and this is the Garfield eyeshadow palette. This palette by Glamlight, I love the quality of this. This to me is such a summer palette. The only color that I don't love 100% in this palette is this steel blue. I wish this could have been like a popping baby blue. I'm usually not the biggest fan of a warm tone sort of palette like this, but I will say the quality here was outstanding. It was really, really good. And I have not tried the Betty Boop palette just yet. It is sitting there. I'm going to be using that for around the Valentine's Day season that is going to come up next, okay? Talking about Valentine's Day season, this was also a palette that came out in late 2023 that I only played around with in early 2024 though. So number 42 is gonna go to Glaminatrix, and this is the Rich Romantic Eyeshadow Palette. Oh my gosh, this is such a cute palette. Such a cute curation of these pinky mauvey tones combined with these neutral tones right here. Maybe not my favorite undertones when it comes to brown shades, but overall this palette is giving me major retro vibes. They have an amazing formula. One of my favorite formulas in the world. I really, really love them. Their shimmers are incredible. The only thing I will say is that these shimmers all have a little bit of a greener undertone, at least these here in the middle. Now, I don't mind that. I actually like green shifty things. A lot of people did not love that. I actually think they are stunning. Very beautiful, maybe not my all-time favorite color story that Glaminatrix has ever released. There are definitely some other palettes coming up a little bit more towards the top by Glaminatrix, but I like it. I like it, and I created some stunning looks with this nonetheless. So number 41 is gonna go to Nomad Cosmetics, and this is their Ireland Wild Atlantic Way eyeshadow palette. Another Nomad Cosmetics eyeshadow palette. Now, you may know this, but Nomad Cosmetics is theming their eyeshadow palettes around a destination, and this is their Ireland palette. Now, this is actually really pretty. If you like a lot of green, it is such a stunning palette. And this is not just a monochromatic green palette. There is a lot of variety going on here. I really feel like they could have done a little bit of a better job with including some more green shimmers, because I felt like this one was a little bit of a darker green, and then this was a golden green. I really needed like an iridescent, sort of like neon green. I did not need this coppery gold, and then this very, very warm gold. In general, it's not my favorite color. And then also this dark blue shade right here. Did not love it. I mean, I am being so nitpicky here, right? Because this is such a beautiful palette, and if you love green, and if you do like these tones, you would love this palette because the quality, stunning. All right, so let's move on to my top 40, and oh my gosh, it's just gonna get better and better and better now. My number 40 is gonna go to Blend Bunny Cosmetics, and this is the Sickly Sweet eyeshadow palette. Another palette that was actually released during the Halloween season of 2023. I purchased this back then, and when I looked at it, I did not really feel it, and I only used this during the springtime of 2024. This really is a pastel cotton candy dream. It is very pastel-y, okay, but at least you also have some deepening up shades in this. And I like that it goes from very light to mid-tone too deep. I just wish there could have been some more of these stunning like shimmer shades. You know, I wish I could have had a little bit more variety with that. Really nice. You can do so many funky, beautiful looks with this. Okay, so number 39 is gonna go to Gloss Gods, and this is the Molten Metals eyeshadow palette. This is still a very new palette to me. The quality of these shimmers is on a whole different level. So shiny, so sparkly, beautiful formula. I like this palette. It is, when you're looking at this, you may think, oh, it's like really boring. It's not. This really is not boring whatsoever. This is so beautiful. Now, is this my perfect neutral color story? Maybe not, but I can still create a beautiful look with this. But these shimmers really do steal the show. All right, so let's move on to the next one. And number 38 is gonna go to ColourPop, and this is the Beauty and the Beast eyeshadow palette. This was my favorite palette that they came out with this year. I really love this color story. I've created some beautiful looks with this, and this is a palette that I can see myself reaching for over and over again, to be honest. I mean, this is a sequin shade. This one did not show up on me though that well. This was the only shade that really kind of failed me. This shade, however, it is beautiful, but again, it's like one of these glittery gels that I don't love. But overall, I think I love this color story. I think this is very wearable and it's very, very cute. All right, so the next spot, number 37, is going to go to Cosmic Beauty, and this is the Undergrowth eyeshadow palette. Now listen, the quality of this palette is exceptional. It's so beautiful. It might just not be my favorite color story in the world. Do you remember what I told you guys about the swampy, murky green shades and yellow shades? Yeah, well, this is kind of that. I also feel like that the selection of the shimmer shades, although they are beautiful, right? Some of these are stunning. They are a little bit repetitive. They are just a little bit too repetitive, if you ask me. I wanted to try it. I did create some beautiful looks with this, but it's not my perfect color story. But I think the quality is great. And if you like these murky, swampy green tones, oh my gosh, you would love this palette. If you are an earth sign, maybe you're gonna love this. It is pretty, just not necessarily for me. And then number 36 is gonna go to another Odin's Eye eyeshadow palette, and this is the Earthwood palette in collaboration with the Fancy Face. This is my favorite one by Odin's Eye. I still have one Odin's Eye palette right here that I still have to use. Solmane 2 or something. The one that they released last year. I have not gotten around playing with that, but it looks stunning. I think this is so pretty. Like, this was something that I reached for so much. I created some stunning looks with this. This is, again, a very earthy sort of palette, but it does not have any of these very swampy tones. And I think that's why I love this. It goes from light to deep. The shimmer shades are beautiful. Like this shade right here, Beauty. Oh my gosh. This is like one of these grass green shimmer shades that flip to like an orangey pink. So beautiful, so stunning. But I did create some beautiful looks with this palette. I really, really love it. And I also do love the next palette. So number 35 is going to go to Nomad Cosmetics, and this is the Fuji 5 Lakes eyeshadow palette. First off, this is going to win Best Packaging of 2024. This is like an oil canvas. And I mean, this is so beautiful. I immediately realized that this color story has all of the primary colors in here. So it's really fun to mix these shades together. This formula is spectacular. It's beautiful. But I wish we could have done something else than these two. When we have a really pretty, like iridescent blue here, we could have kept one of them, but did we need this? Couldn't we have done something different here? Maybe we could have added like a deep neutral brown matte shade, because what this really lacks is a little bit of depth. The problem is that I'm left with this one being the deepest shade, and it's like this teal blue shade, and it just does not work too well to deepen up every shade that is in here. Love this palette though. Really, really like it. Okay, so let's move on to number 34 on the ranking, and number 34 is gonna go to Beauty Bay, and it's the Smoky eyeshadow palette. I really like a good smoky eye. I am such a sucker for cool tones, but this really surprised me. I absolutely love this palette. This is great quality, and this is literally a bargain. If you consider that this has 42 colors, I mean, it's a gigantic palette. This really has every gray that you've been dreaming about. I love the fact that this goes from light to very deep. This has different undertones of blue, of violet, of olive. There is just so much. There is even taupe in here. There's even some brown shades in here. I think this was such a great formula. This is the best Giga palette that I've ever tried out by Beauty Bay, and I have quite a few. And I think this is the one that has a really nice shimmer formula. They also have a smaller version of this palette, but I think this is the better version because you get so much more variety in this. I really like this palette and I use this quite a lot. So this was such an amazing surprise to me. All right, so the next one, number 33, is gonna go to Gourmand Girls, and this is the Peach Perfect eyeshadow palette. Oh my gosh, Gourmand Girls, again, they really nailed it with the color story here. Very amazing formula. I love Gourmand Girls formula, as I said. Some of these shimmers are so, so pretty. I honestly just don't love this shade right here. It's like this weird satin. I also wish that this could have had a deeper brown. This was a little bit too mid-toned, and it also had more of a yellow undertone. I did some beautiful looks with this, and the quality is definitely top-notch. There are just some very nitpicky things with this, but I like it. I really love it. And I also do like the next one. So this one is number 32, and it's going to go to Bella Beauté Bar, and this is the Realm of Fairies eyeshadow palette. This is actually a collaboration with Sassy Fairy. This palette was released during the holiday season, so it's still a very like new palette to me. I will say this was the one palette that re-sparked my love for blue eyeshadows again. It goes from very light to very deep, and I really, really think this is a beautiful palette. Some of these more chunkier shades, like this one right here, and even this one, and unfortunately also, I think it was this one, there were some shades that are just too emollient for my liking. This bloody shade was so beautiful. Oh my gosh. Like, this is a dream, and this wasn't like all wet and stuff. Like, I could make that one work so much better than some of these other shades. So that's why it's not up any higher, because this could have been in my top 10, and really it made me fall in love with blue eyeshadow again. So let's move on to number 31. It's gonna go to Blend Bunny Cosmetics, and this is the Divination eyeshadow palette in collaboration with Robert Welch. This palette, it's a rainbow palette without the reds, but finally somebody gave us these beautiful neutrals, something I was craving. In my ranking, where I did rank this initially, I did say I wish this palette would have not included this row and this row. But I think Robert Welch's favorite color is purple, so I'm gonna give it that. I'm gonna leave this purple row intact. This also does include a little bit more shimmers than the other palettes did, and I just felt this was beautiful. I think it's beautiful. I think you can create so many looks, and I did create some fun looks with this. This shade Paul might be my favorite one. I'm gonna use this like forever and ever until I pan this, because this is exactly a shade, like this has a little bit of like this blue sparkle in there, and it just makes this shade so interesting. I don't really have that many negative things to say, as you can tell by now. Okay, so let's move on to my top 30. And number 30 is gonna go to Unearthly Cosmetics, and this is the Night Terror eyeshadow palette. So this was part of a collection box. I really love this. I think this came out for Halloween, if I'm not mistaken, in 2024. I mean, I really do like purple, and I think this is a 9-pan eyeshadow palette done right. It goes from light to deep, so much variation, 3 shimmers. They are all very different. And this shade, Night Terror, the one in the middle, oh my gosh, this is such a stunning shade. It looks super wet on the lids, so I really love that about this palette. That's why it's ranked a little bit higher up. I will tell you, my top 30, they are all great. They are all great palettes. I all love them. So from here on now, I'm just going to be raving. So my number 29 is going to go to Adapt Cosmetics, and this is the Flying Fiddles eyeshadow palette. Outer packaging, again, stunning. This lace packaging, it's so beautiful. It's also done in a very sophisticated way. It's really, really pretty. This color story though, stop it. This is a beautiful, neutral, leaning, rosy palette with a little bit of a twist. These shimmers are spectacular. So beautiful. I love this shade Blue Crown. This time around, they only included 4 mattes instead of the usual 5 mattes. Some of them were a little bit harder to work with, especially this one right here. There are so many things that I love about this palette. I think it's beautiful. I just wish they could change their matte formula. Okay, so number 28 is gonna go to Fantasy Cosmetica. This is the Cradled in Ice palette. The quality of this, I feel like Fantasy Cosmetica also has one of my all-time favorite formulas. Like, they are amazing. These shimmers look so wet on the lids. These shades right here are a little bit deceiving. You would assume that this is a little bit more pinky peach neutral, and then this is more of like a cool tone taupey brown. This is straight up pink, and this is straight up purple. So I was a little bit confused when I looked at them and then I put them onto my eye. They looked very different from what I saw in the pan. Nonetheless, I created some beautiful looks with this. Moving on to number 27 in the ranking. This one is by Huda Beauty, and it's the Icy Nude eyeshadow palette. Another ice-themed palette. I love this palette. I really, really do like it. Really beautiful. I've created some stunning looks with this, especially the shade what's it called? Aurora. This one right here is so beautiful. I wish all of the shimmers could have this formula. So only these two have a more like flaky, chunky formula. Wish they could have just had the same formula than Aurora, and then this is just garbage. Garbage. Honestly, I would not recommend anyone putting this onto their eyes or near their eyes. I don't even know how this is eyes safe. It's just a very, very bad glitter formula. Otherwise, I like this. I really, really like this. I wish we could have had a baby blue though. Would have made it a little bit more icy than nude. Then my number 26 is going to go to Simply Posh, and this is the Aurora Lights eyeshadow palette. I do think that this one came out in late 2023, if I'm not mistaken, but I only tried it out early 2024. They are really, really good. I love their mattes and their shimmer formula. This is such a beautiful color story, very electric, definitely inspired by the Northern Lights, and I can see it. I wish this could have had a little bit more of a lighter shade though. You may think that this is light, it's not that light, so otherwise these are beautiful. There is one shade that I really love. I think it's the shade Twinkling. Twinkling was so stunning. That is a beautiful shade. Pretty palette, really love the quality. Okay, so moving on, this is number 25, and this is by Too Faced, and it's the Aptly in Love eyeshadow palette. And you are just gonna be shaking your head and thinking, where have you been, girl? Because this was my very first eyeshadow palette purchase I ever made by Too Faced. This is well curated. It's something different. It is exciting. It has a beautiful color story. I really love it. The shimmers are all beautiful with the exception of these weird velvet shades right here. This one and this one. And I wish this could have been like a minty matte shade. If this would have been a minty matte shade, oh my gosh. This would have been so much better even. And I created some stunning looks with this. I love the color story. It goes from light, very deep, mid-tones, really creative, and I just think this is cute. It's so cute. All right, so next spot is number 24, and it's gonna go to Adapt Cosmetics, and this is their inspired eyeshadow palette. I know this was not released in 2024. I had this in 2023. I forgot about it, and then I used it in 2024. Nonetheless, I wanted to include this because this is beautiful. And for the first time, I did not really have an issue with the Adapt matte formula. I mean, if you like green, you are up for a surprise. However, this is not all green. Like, there are some fun twists to this palette, and I just love the quality. I love these shimmers. They are so beautiful. This is so well curated. I really like this shade, Daniel Brickwell. Oh my gosh, beautiful, beautiful. Completely up my alley. This shade is also just stunning, and these other shades also beautiful. I think this is so much fun, and I think this time around, the matte color story makes so much sense. And it's such a beautiful palette. Maybe they are going to be bringing this back, but I wanted to include this because I did not get to rank this last year. All right, so let's move on to the next spot, and that is number 23, and that one is going to go to Beauty Bay Reckless Romance. This was their Valentine's Day release of 2024. This palette has some beautiful shades in here. The quality, amazing. I really enjoyed this. I love the fact that this combines grays with some like reddish browns with a more neutral brown right here. We have a light shade, we have a deep shade. There is not just pink in this palette. There are some really nice hidden gems in this palette, like this shade right here. I used this so much. I really think this was their best quality that they had released this year, and I created some beautiful looks with this. I think it's beautiful. Overall, I had a good time with this. So number 22 is gonna go to Makeup by Mario, and this is the Ethereal Ice Moonlight eyeshadow palette. It is so stunning. This is a beautiful, cool, neutral eyeshadow palette, this color story. I love the selection of the tones. I love these pale golden shades, the curation going from light to deep, beautiful contrast. And I do think in terms of formulation, this is an elevated formula compared to the all mattes palette that I did rank quite low. These shimmers are very, very thin. They are very, very sparkly, and I need to be very, very precise and very delicate when I actually apply them in order for me to avoid a bunch of glitter fallout. I actually managed that by just taking my time and not using a brush. I will use a lot of glitter glue though. But that is maybe the reason why I did not make it into my top 20. It's just a little bit more of an effort, more of a time-consuming effort for me to apply this. But in general, I like this color story. It's really up my alley. Loved all the looks that I've created with this. And yeah, it's a great palette, you know. All right, so let's move on to number 21. And number 21 is gonna go to Unearthly Cosmetics. And this is the All I Ever Wanted eyeshadow palette. An all shimmer palette. It is not inexpensive, but this is worth every penny to me. I mean, I really do love their shimmer formula. Their shimmer formula is spectacular. And this is also a reformulated palette that was already in existence years ago. I love these yellow tones. Some of these actually have some holographic sparkle to them. Personally, this is more of a companion palette. I rarely do an all shimmer eye look. I mean, I never do that. But this could be a one and done palette for some. For me, it's an amazing companion palette. If I want a pop of something, this shade Angel, love. Love. And also this shade. Starlight, incredible. In general, I don't have many yellow shades in the newer formula by Unearthly, so that was the selling point for this. Ah, beautiful. Just a little bit pricey, but worth everything to me. I have nothing to critique about this. All right, you guys, are you ready for my top 20? So let's start off with my number 20, and this is by Nomad Cosmetics, and this is the New Zealand Stargazing eyeshadow palette. This palette by Nomad Cosmetics is really, really stunning. I really love it. I mean, this color story was also one that was quite popular this year. The blue, the purples, and a little bit of some neutrals in here. But this is just outstanding quality. I really like the mattes. I love the fact that this goes from light to deep. Nomad Cosmetics has one of my favorite formulas in the world. I think this is really galactic. This was one of the very first palettes that came out in 2024. And I picked it up a little bit later, to be honest, but I just loved it. I don't know if you're interested in seeing my looks with this. Let me know in the comment section if you are. But it's so beautiful. So beautiful. All right, so let's move on to number 19. And number 19 is going to go to Glaminatrix, and this is the Barely Basic eyeshadow palette. Wow, this is such a beautiful, more like neutral leaning palette, but it's just so not boring. Oh my gosh, I love this. Glaminatrix, again, one of my favorite formulas in the world. I really also love the fact that this is lined up in a gradient, makes it really easy. And the shimmer formula is just top notch. I really do love this matte formula. This matte formula is smooth, buttery, buildable, blends out like a dream. It's just amazing. The addition of these iridescent shades really did it for me. I like a good iridescent shimmer. And I think this is such a beautiful palette. The only thing why this is not ranked even higher is because of these swampy greens. Not my favorite undertone of greens. So I really like this, but this just made it ranked like number 19, which is already very, very high. All right, so let's move on to number 18, and number 18 is going to go to Unearthly Cosmetics, and this is the Just a Taste eyeshadow palette. This was released during the holiday season, Christmas season of 2024, and this is their newest palette as of right now. I still have to post my looks with this, but I did some really, really pretty looks with this. Vampire themed, right? This color story is deep and grungy and bloody and just ancient, and it gives me like such antique vibes. We really do have the warm tones meeting some of these like cool tones here, but overall a very vampy, deep and grungy eyeshadow palette. Some of these shimmers are so exquisite. I love the shade Mossy Grave, the shade Moonlit Veil, and Haunted Heart. This is out of this world stunning. I would have loved this palette a lot more if it wasn't for this shade, and this shade. They are a little bit lackluster for Unearthly Cosmetics. I feel like they are a little bit more subdued. And also the only very like light shade in this, which I understand it's like a deep grungy sort of palette, is this one. The rest does pull pretty deep. Maybe this one, it's more of a mid-tone, but it does not have the best ratio when it comes to the mattes in terms of like contrast. But the quality here is fantastic. Again, Unearthly is killing it this year, and this is just beautiful. Number 17 is gonna go to Nomad Cosmetics, and this is the Haunted Europe eyeshadow palette. I am cheating here because this was not released in 2023, nor was it released in 2024. but it was technically re-released in 2024, and I never had this palette, and I just wanted to include it because it's just so beautiful. And I will never get another opportunity talking about it. Now, this is not their new and improved formula. I feel like they have done so much better ever since, but nonetheless, I love this palette. I love this color story. This is a colorful palette that meets some cool tones, and I think the looks that I've created this year with this was stunning. I'm not sure if it's still available. Maybe it is. Maybe it was just available for a short and limited amount of time, but I just wanted to give it a quick shout out because it's just so pretty. It would have ranked probably even higher if it would not have this repetition right here. I feel like they always put like two golden shades in a lot of their palettes, like their Island palette. But yeah, I just love these cool toned neutrals. And I also really like the orangey tones and then this like muted down, bricky terracotta red shade. Absolutely stunning. I really love the looks that I've created with this, and I think this is really deserving to be in this ranking. I know I cheated a little bit. All right, so let's move on to number 16. This is by Gourmand Girls, and this is their Frozen Kiss eyeshadow palette. This was also a holiday release for Christmas 2024. It's a newer palette and I love it. Oh my gosh. I really think this color story is so unique. I love the fact that this goes from light to deep. We have some beautiful midtones. These shimmers are so amazing. They are very softly pressed, so just be a little bit careful when you pick them up. They're a little bit more fragile, but man, they have such a beautiful payoff, and some of them have this beautiful holographic sort of shimmer in them. I think this color story is top notch, really, really nice, and I love Gourmand Girls formula. If you remember last year's ranking, I ranked them very, very high. All right, so let's move on to my number 15. This one is by Adapt Cosmetics, and this is the Cyborg Choir palette. This is something special. This is so fun. I really, really enjoyed this palette, and I did not think I would love it that much, but man, do I love this. This is a holographic dream. These shades are so unique. Some of these shades are just so special. Like they are so, so, so special. This yellow, you can see, I mean, I was digging in there. I really, really love this yellow. And I really like the curation of the matte tones. I felt like these matte tones worked so well with each other, and I created some stunning looks with this palette. And this got my creative juices flowing. This inspired me. And I think overall the quality of this is fantastic. And I did not expect to love it as much as I do. The only shade that I don't love 100% is the blue. I feel like this blue is a little bit patchy. It's a little bit harder to work with. It's a little bit harder to blend out and to build up. Otherwise, stunning. I don't even care about the blue shade, to be honest with you, because the looks that I've created with this were phenomenal, and maybe one of my favorite palettes by Adapt Cosmetics thus far. I really love this. This is just special, really, really special. So number 14 in my ranking is gonna go to Cosmic Beauty, and this is the this season eyeshadow palette. I do think this might be a limited edition by Cosmic Beauty, but man, wow. I recently posted my looks with this, and I've got to say, the looks I've created with this palette, stunning. The color story is so interesting. This is really like a festive palette, but you can use this whenever. I feel like this is so versatile. I did some beautiful looks with this palette, and these greens, oh, and then also these warmer like neutral tones, stunning. The lilacs, beautiful. I really had such a great, amazing time in this shade Fairy Lights. It is such a beautiful multi-chrome. It is out of this world beautiful. I really love this palette. I love the fact that it goes from light to deep again, and it just has so much variety, and you can be so creative with this palette. I really have to say, this surprised me so much. And this is very vibrant. This is very fun. And it's something different. And I just think that is just so hard to do, something different for the holiday season. It's traditional, but yet it's not. So I just really like this palette and I love the looks that I've created with this. And then number 13 is gonna go to Simply Posh, and this is the Coastal Eyeshadow Palette. This was a release that they came out with during the summer months, and you guys know I love summer. It's my favorite season, so this really gives me beachy vibes, sandy vibes. This color story is beautiful. Some of these tones are so interesting. I felt like this color story was very, very unique. The only thing that sometimes Simply Posh does not get right 100% is to include a little bit of a deeper shade somewhere. Something that we could use to deepen up the shades, and then a very light shade. I think it's always keeping it in the realm of light midtones versus deep midtones. But man, these were beautiful. This shade right here, Sunset, it looked like wet gloss on my lids. People were asking me, what shade is this on your lids? And it was this. This shade by Simply Posh is outstanding. I like their formula a lot. Their matte formula is creamy, buttery, and silky smooth. Blends out like a dream. I had such a great time with this palette, and I think it's just unique. It's a unique piece in my collection, and that's why it's ranked the way it's ranked. So number 12 is gonna go to another Unearthly Cosmetics palette, and this is the Spring Magic Eyeshadow palette. I got to admit, I really, really do adore this palette, and I slept on it for a little bit, and then I picked it up and I was like, why did I not pick this up straight away? It's amazing. This was the very first time that Unearthly did release a palette with this kind of format with 18 pans, and I think this is so beautiful. I really love it. The only thing I don't love 100% about this palette is the repetition of the pink shimmers. I wish we could have done without this or without that shade. However, the mattes, stunning. For a spring palette, you know, I'm not too mad at the fact that this does not have a very, very deep like shade, because I feel like this blue and this brown are deep enough for me to make it work. I think I just created some beautiful looks with this palette. That's why it's ranked quite high up, because this was unexpected. And when I started using this, I was just like, man, this is so beautiful. Like some of these shades are out of this world. The shades Sunshine, stunning. Grimoire, beautiful. Clouds, beautiful. Dragonfly, this is absolutely mesmerizing. And I just love combining these tones with each other. I really think it's beautiful. The only thing I would have changed personally, I maybe would have just included some purple here. Something different. The next one, I even love this one more. And again, it's by a reoccurring brand. So number 11 goes to Nomad Cosmetics, and this is the Keys Beachy and Peachy eyeshadow palette. Oh my gosh, this was such a positive surprise to me. This being a summer-themed eyeshadow palette inspired by Florida, I think it's perfect. It's so perfect. I created some real fun looks with this palette. I love that we have these like baby blues, and then we have this mint. We have so much variety. And when you start combining these, just go for it. Just go for it, because you're going to realize that it all makes sense. It's all going to make sense. And although there are no like multi-chromes in here, like no shifty shades, these shimmers were so sophisticated. They were elegant, smooth, sparkly, packed full. I loved this. I really, really loved it. And you can create a beautiful sunset look with this. And I also really do appreciate that the deepest shade in here is this purple, because sometimes purples can work very, very well to deepen up looks, especially if it's color story like this. That was great. Do I wish we could have had a little bit more of maybe like a bronzy shade in here? Maybe. But I think it's perfect the way it is. It is so stunning, and I really don't have anything negative to say. It's beautiful. Beautiful palette. Loved it. All right, you guys, we have arrived at my top 10. So this was the easiest part, because I immediately knew what my favorite palettes were, and I knew what the worst palettes were. The middle part was a little bit kind of giving me a headache, but this was easy. This was easy because these are so good, in my opinion. I love these. I really do. So my number 10 is gonna go to Fantasy Cosmetica, and this is the Harvest of Souls eyeshadow palette. I mean, this was unexpected. This is such a beautiful palette by Fantasy Cosmetica. I really love it. I love the color story. I think this is very unique. This is something I've never seen before. And just to do that, it's kind of hard, but I also love this formula. Like Fantasy Cosmetica has one of my favorite formulas, as I mentioned already. I mean, I love this shade. This shade Poison is absolutely outstanding, and it's very hard to do a shade like that right. And then some of these shades, like this shade, definitely has some holographic like shimmers in there and just looks so beautiful. This shade Souls looks like wet gloss on the lids. The only thing I don't love are these two. These two murky, swampy shades are not for me. All right, so let's move on to number 9 in the ranking. So number 9 is gonna go to Glaminatrix Cosmetics, and this is the Nocturnal Eyeshadow Palette. I actually have the original one with the old formula. This is an older color story that was re-released this year by Glaminatrix with their new and improved formula. And I really wanted to have it because I love their new formula. I felt like their old formula was great, but I definitely do prefer their new mattes. A little bit smaller. They have definitely downsized the pen size of this. I think this is a little bit more compact in terms of the format. You can do so many beautiful looks with this palette. I did prepare some looks. I don't think I've posted them just yet, but I will do that. Again, there were so many palettes last year. I'm lagging behind, as I said, but my gosh, is this beautiful. This shade Luna, I love this shade. This shade looks like wet gloss on your lids. And then Milky Way, outstanding. And you can do so many interesting combinations with this. Now, this formula just blends out like a dream. Buildable, buttery, smooth, everything I love. And I love these impactful shimmers. They are beautiful. And I think they are going to be re-releasing the Nearly Natural eyeshadow palette this year. So that was also one that I hoped for, that they would like re-release with their new formula. Okay, so let's move on to my number 8. And my number 8 is gonna go again to Nomad Cosmetics, and this is their Polar Express eyeshadow palette. This was their holiday release of 2024. I think these blue tones are so beautiful. These icy tones so stunning. These taupey shades, these brownie shades. This was something I really enjoyed, and I love the looks I've created with this. The formula here is top notch. Top notch. It's incredible. I really loved it. And this shade right here, sparkly goodness, so beautiful. I think this is such a well curated holiday palette, and not just for the holidays. I feel like this is something I want to use all the time. This is such a cohesive color story, and these blue tones, stunning, goes from light to deep. Loved it. Loved everything about it. All right, so my number 7 is gonna go to another Unearthly Cosmetics eyeshadow palette. It is the Dreamer palette. This is so beautiful. Look at this packaging. I actually kept the outer box that this came with, because this actually came in a bigger box. I think I purchased the entire collection. This is kind of like similar as the color story by Nomad Cosmetics with their New Zealand Stargazing palette, but this is a little bit more curated, and I just love these shimmers. These shimmers are so outstanding. The shade Dream State has this holographic reflect in here, and then the shade right here, Tranquil, and also Float. Some of these shades were mesmerizing. For a 12 pan eyeshadow palette, I felt like this was curated very well. Goes from light to deep, has some midtones, and these tones go together so well. So well, loved it. Really did. So my number 6 in the ranking is gonna go to Luna Beauty, and this is their Moonshroom eyeshadow palette. Now this really surprised me. It really did. First off, love the packaging. This gives me like trippy forest vibes. I will say this is an unexpected color story for me to love. As I said so many times in this video, I don't necessarily love swampy tones, and this does include a couple of those. However, these tones worked so well on me. I did create some beautiful looks, and you can get me with a periwinkle. You can get me with like these really beautiful, like mauvey violet aubergine shades, and then these toasty neutrals in here. If it's a warm eyeshadow palette, it has to have something like this, like a really beautiful yellow. I love the quality of these mattes. They build it up and blend it out like perfection, honestly. The shimmers, I also love them, but I love the mattes a little bit more. This shade Magic Mushroom, beautiful, and Witch's Hat. This was This was so beautiful. And every look that I've created with this palette, I absolutely adored. And I think this is really, really good. So let's move on to my top 5. Oh my gosh, my top 5. When I'm looking at these, I'm like, yeah, there was one brand that actually made it twice into my top 5. Now, my number 5 is also a newer palette. I still have to post my looks with this, but I swear to you, it's coming up. It's so beautiful. So this one is by Unearthly Cosmetics, and this is the Not Normal eyeshadow palette. Now, this is also a case where a brand has re-released an older palette with a newer formula, but Unearthly Cosmetics just went the extra mile, and they actually have edited the color story a little bit. They kept a lot of the original shades, but they also like added some additional shades, and now this has 18 shades. So this is their 18 pan format. This used to be my favorite eyeshadow palette for a long, long time by Unearthly Cosmetics, and I was dreaming about them to reformulate this. I really wanted to. Maybe I manifested some stuff last year. Like, this is really like a grungy, neutral dream. The color story as it is right now, it reminds me a little bit of my number 1 palette of 2023, the one from last year's ranking, just a little bit. It's a little bit different, but same vibes. I love the quality. I love what they have done. I love the addition of these shades. I actually did recreate a look that I did years ago with this palette because I loved it so much. I was like, I want to see if the look looks the same, and I can tell you this is better because of the formula. And fun fact, I actually wore this palette in my best of beauty video. I think this is so special. They are killing it this year with this formula. Beautiful, top notch, amazing. What can I say? Rocking it. So grungy, so vibrant, goes from light to deep. I love it. I really do. Oh my gosh. And then the next palette, my number 4. So this is by Cosmic Beauty, and this is the Neutrals eyeshadow palette. I mean, I did rank this really, really high up if you compare it to the Culturals palette, and I did not expect it. I think this is one of my favorite neutral palettes in the world. It is just neutral, wearable, but so not boring. I really was digging in there because I used this palette so much. When I did not know what palette to reach for, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna use this because this will always just look great. This shade Lux, oh my gosh, like beautiful, so stunning. And then, I mean, this shade too. This is also like this beautiful multi-chrome here. Funny enough, I thought that this would be a little bit warmer, but it's actually not. These tones all lean pretty neutral. Now you can definitely warm it up a little bit. I use this a ton. I think this is such a nice, like spicy, neutral kind of palette, and I really love it. Yeah, this was great. Okay, my top 3. Are we ready for my top 3? I mean, my top 3 immediately knew which ones. Number 3 is gonna go to Nomad Cosmetics, and this is the Chicago Speak Easy eyeshadow palette. This is giving me great Gatsby vibes for some reason. I love the outside, but what's inside is even better. I think the color story is so well curated. On one side, we have these beautiful muted lilac, violet shades, and then on the other side we have these toasty, stunning neutral shades. And in the middle we have a pop of chartreuse, almost like lime chartreuse, and we have a black to deepen it all up. I think this quality is top notch. The middle row, all of these shimmers are actually like multi-chromes. Like, they are not like crazy, crazy shifty, but they are sophisticated, elegant, and sparkly. And they do have a shift. They definitely do. I knew that this would be one of my favorite Nomad Cosmetics palettes of all time because these are just the tones that I love. And although I do prefer cool neutral tones over these warm tones, I love these warm tones. These warm tones are so stunning. They look really not out of place on my skin tone. I just created some beautiful looks with this. I really love the looks I have created with this palette. I think it's top-notch quality. All right, so moving on to my number 2. So my number 2 spot is gonna go to Blend Bunny Cosmetics, and this is the Longing eyeshadow palette. I did not expect to love this palette as much as I actually do. What was I thinking? After all, it is Blend Bunny Cosmetics. The way that this was created is very melancholic. It's very like, I mean, it even says it on here, 24 tragically beautiful shades. That just describes it all. But man, the quality of this blew my socks off. This is really my kind of color story. I enjoyed every second that I spent with this eyeshadow palette, and I feel like whenever I want to do something cool toned, which is a lot of the times, I'm going to reach for this. There is so much variation, although at first glance you may not think that. You may think there is a little bit of repetition going on right here. At least that's what I thought. But I was proven so wrong. Because when I used this, I definitely realized, oh no, all of these tones are very different actually. This is the best shimmer formula I've ever tried by Blend Bunny Cosmetics. So smooth, so glossy, so impactful, so shimmery, so shiny, just looked amazing on my lids. And especially the shade Love Letters, this was on a whole different level. I mean, beautiful. I even love these like cool toned olive swampy tones. But this is actually what will convince me about a palette. If you make shades that I in general do not adore 100%, and then I use them and I'm like, wow, these are actually stunning. They work on my skin tone. It's maybe because they are more subdued. It's maybe because they are a little bit more cool toned in general, but these worked so well. This were right here. Looked stunning. I created some beautiful looks with this. This is really up my alley. And I love this. I really think this is deserving of number 2. But my number 1, man, my number 1. I will say this is one of my favorite palettes that I own. Perfection. This is perfection to me. Seriously, I'm not kidding you. And this is a brand we've seen already in this ranking quite a lot. You may know which one it is. Of course, my number 1 this year is gonna go to Unearthly Cosmetics, and it's the Gargoyle eyeshadow palette. When I got this, I honestly did not expect that I would love it that much. I mean, when I opened it up, I was like, wow, what? Like, this might be something I really love, but when I started using it, there was no going back anymore. I immediately knew that I stumbled upon like a treasure of makeup, a treasure, because the color combinations that you can do with this color story, in my opinion, all of these tones go so well together. You have such a great gradient going from light to deep, and it's everything I personally love in a color story. I really love these brown tones. I think they are very, very pretty. They are not too cool toned. They are not too warm toned. I like the addition of this murky mint in here. Then like the aubergine violet, gray, I mean, come on, electric royal blue, and then also this more subdued blue gray, and we have a deeper sort of like steel blue shade, and then a black, and then these shimmer shades are out of this world. The sparkle is unreal. I love each and every one of them, and this is stunning. I mean, this was a Halloween release, and I'm wearing this all the time. I'm actually wearing this palette on my eyes today. And every single look that I've done with this palette just blew my socks off. Under my studio lights, you're not able to see this that much, but when you go outside or when you are in low light, this has some green to it, it has some pink to it, and it's just this beautiful gold. And not every gold tone is going to look good on me, but this, stop, beautiful. I also really love the shade Mystic Stone. I mean, I love every shade in this. That's why it's my number 1. I mean, every time I'm using this, I feel like it's giving me a new combination. I can create something different. I can mix and match these colors. And it's just my perfect palette. I love this. Love it. I could use this every day and be happy. If I would only have this palette, I'd be happy forever. It's everything I need in one palette. This was a tough video, I will admit that. It's a lot of work doing a ranking video like this, but now it is done, and now I do want to know, what was your favorite eyeshadow palette of this year? Did you try anything that I featured in today's video? Please do drop me a comment down below and let me know. And in case you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you have not yet. I would absolutely love for you to join, and also ring the bell in order to get notified about my upcoming videos, because I'm going to be posting so many more like eyeshadow looks in terms of short videos, and there's going to be so much more amazing content coming up in 2025. So just stay tuned on here. So until next time, please do take care. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.